All right, I guess I'm up. Uh, good afternoon or morning, everybody. This is the last in this series of four for Morgan & Morgan that are dear to me because it's my law firm. So, and I did not want to make the last one filler. So I've spent some time getting ready for this one to make sure that it's worth your time, because I know your time's valuable. So let's get started. I call this winning at the beginning. I have an audio tape out called winning at the beginning. This is winning before beginning. And winning at the beginning is about voir dire and how to use challenge for cause effectively to eliminate bias. And then making sure you're ahead after opening statement. That's the winning at the beginning series. I also have one called winning while finishing, or winning at the finish, which is about closing argument. This one is pre-trial, winning before you ever walk in court, winning before beginning. And my book, Don't Eat the Bruises, is a trial book. My new book, which is going to be Deeper Cuts, that hopefully will be out late this year, early next year, is really taking those same Don't Eat the Bruises trial systems and, number one, charting new territory in the trial setting, but also taking it to what I call uncharted territory for my book purposes, into the workup phase, taking these same concepts that are so effective at trial and applying them during the workup phase, with the idea that if we can create a bruise-free case in the workup phase, there's a high, or at least a higher probability of getting a maximum justice in a settlement, getting a full and fair settlement, which is always great. As much as we love trials, it's the best thing for your client to have certainty and be done, so long as they don't have to sacrifice fairness to get there. And often you've got a choice: sacrifice or go to trial. And I'd say always go to trial. But my idea here is these systems, I'm selling them short if I make them only about trial. I want folks to be able to apply them in the workup phase, because I know what it does in our firm. I know the lawyers follow these things, and I know we get extraordinarily good settlements for our client, really fair settlements, because the lawyers on the other side and the insurance adjusters know we have worked them up. They know what it looks like in trial, and all of a sudden they're seeing it in the workup phase. And it's just this, the tension is, why run the risk? Now, I'm not suggesting we don't try a lot of trials, but we also have improved our settlements very significantly, which benefits the clients very much. And it's much more fulfilling to yourself, not just financially, but just we're all in this for the right reason, and we want to do the best for our client. And if you take these principles and start them and get them in place, and your case is completely integrated into not letting these bruises bring your case value down for settlement, and the defense dares to try to shortchange your client, your case is then ready to it's pre-wired to plug it into those Don't Eat the Bruises systems when you get to trial. So instead of taking a case and saying, all right, I'm going to have to twist and work and get it, and all right, now it's ready for this. It's just seamless. Let's go try it. It's ready to go, which means your likelihood of winning a trial also goes up if you end up trying the case. So that's what I really want to talk about. And the key to this, and I've talked about some of this, and if some of it starts to sound familiar, I promise there's going to be overlap, because I can't tell this story and just leave out some of the things I've talked about. But I promise you, I'm going to put them in a fresh light to where you see how the two pieces fit, the workup phase. And you notice I don't say discovery. I've decided discovery is a dirty word. It's a dirty word because people go discover and they go, damn, I got to do discovery. And really, if you see discovery as workup for trial, it's pre-trial, it's trial prep. You're preparing your case to trial. The week before trial or the days before trial, when you're doing that hard trial prep, it's brutal. but it ain't boring. For God's sake, it's exciting. And I want to realize we're doing the same thing during the workup phase. And I'm just afraid that discovery's got a bad name. It sounds like something to check off the box and get done. And I really, really want to change people's perspective. Just like you've heard me talk about, I want to change your perspective about all those things in your cases that appear to be on the surface problems. And they make you unhappy with your cases, and they make you unhappy with your practice. They make you more inclined to settle it, less inclined to go to trial. And I want to go through and say, listen, they're not, so many of those common global things aren't problems. They're just not. We still got to deal with them, but you feel so much better when you go, my cases aren't loaded with problems. They're good cases. They're lovable cases. I enjoy working on them. You are not going to make me settle cheap. And if you don't do right, I'll see your ass in trial because I like this case. That's a change in perspective to say all these things that we thought were problems, we can erase. Not all of them. There are going to be some problems, but these common ones, I can just erase it and they're not problem. And now your caseload is better and it's the same caseload and you enjoy it more. It's a change of perspective. It's a change of spirit. It's a change at a very fundamental level, not just strategic, but fundamental in yourself. This same principle of perspective matters here. We spend so much, I say we, I don't do the discovery anymore. I'm very fortunate. I've reached a point in my career, I try the cases, someone else does them. I still go to important depositions people ask me to go to, but I don't do them routinely like I did. But trust me, I spent a large, until this is baldness is from all the damn workups I did. I've done a lot of them. I paid my damn dues, taking depositions, interrogatories, and drafting complaints and all of that. So I know I'm not speaking from on high and I don't understand. I get it. I get it. So, but what I want folks to see is that phase, all those depositions that take so much of your time can be seen as something to look forward to, something exciting, something productive and meaningful, not just something on my damn to-do list to get done so I can get it closer to trial and either settle it or start the fun. Let's start the fun from the beginning because it is, but some of it is a change in perspective and view. But what I want to do, because I've talked some about that already, what I really want to do is rather than preaching it, I want to show you. I want to go through this and show you how this piece in quote discovery or workup fits here in trial. Because when you see the fit and feel the fit, and I've touched on some of those, I want to go into more detail. It will make it more clear to you why it is so important here. But my real goal is for you to say, and this process of now that I see where it fits and how I'm going to use it against those sneaky, cheap bastards that don't want to pay and disrespect my client or me or my law firm, I got something for you and I'm getting it today in this depot. I'm getting something you don't want me to have, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to relish today because you're going to rue the day you put that witness up or you thought you were going to make my client look bad. That's the kind of overall essence of what I would like to get across with this, but I want to do it in a practical way where you can get there on your own. I can say it till I'm blue in the face, but when you go, I see it, then you go, by God, I'm on board. So that's where I want to go through this. And so let's go through it. And a couple of these points are more global. There are two kinds of depositions. There are the defense witnesses. They're your witnesses, your client or your treating doctor, or even before and after witnesses, or your experts. They're experts, the defendant. So it's theirs and ours. I would ask you to keep in mind two words each. When you are taking, or they are taking your witness's depot, there are two things that need to come out of it. Two primary things. You want to put your client's best foot forward, meaning you want At the end, when it's done, you want your client to come off well, both in the testimony as well as how they appeared and how they acted. Best foot forward, because you're going to get answers out of that depo that you can use to advance your case, build your case, good facts. And so it's best foot forward for our witnesses and avoiding pitfalls. And you can think of it all as steps. Best foot forward, and I don't want to step in a damn hole and trip and break my leg or my case's leg. I want to step on solid ground. And there's only one way to step on solid ground. Be on the lookout for the pitfalls, because they're out there. Some of them are just baked into your case. Some of them, the defense, thrust into your case. And they're good at it. Some of them aren't pitfalls at all, but by God, they make them look like pitfalls. That's going back to, they aren't problems at all. Gap in treatment is not a gap in treatment. They just weren't going to the doctor at the time. Why weren't they going to the doctor? Because hope for a cure was lost. They went a lot when there was hope. And by the way, going to the doctor takes a lot of time. And it's silly to suggest with chronic pain, no doctor equals no pain. That's just hogwash. It doesn't fly. It's a lie. And so when we see that, that's not. Why does my client not have a lot of visible property damage? Because it's a herniated disc case. If it was totaled and mashed, where you go, my God, look at the car on the side of the road, they'd probably be dead. So it comes with the territory. We have answers. We deal with them, but they're not problems. So some of the pitfalls aren't even pitfalls. And we teach the jury they're not. But we got to make sure that it doesn't all of a sudden go from not a real pitfall, it's a phony one, to a real one, because we didn't get our clients ready and they stepped in it. And now it's gotten worse. Priors aren't a problem. Why? You're 50 years old. Of course you've had back problems in your life. Who the hell's got a pristine back after 50 years? We use our neck and back all the time, everything we do. You're going to have some kind of a problem. People have car crashes. People pick things up wrong. They sleep wrong. Priors are part of life. They are not problems. But guess what? They're pitfalls potentially. If we don't get ready for them and your client steps in one, have you had any prior car crashes? No. Any problems with your back? No. And they pull out the chiropractor records where your client went. They pull out the accident report where they had a crash and they went to the emergency room. They complained about their back, their neck. Now it looks like your client's lying. Now you got a big ass pitfall. Preparation would have meant I'm never going to step in it. I'm not going to get hurt by it, because you've explained to your client with directness, no tippy toe. Do you mind if I talk straight to you? Or I can sugarcoat it. What do you want me to do? I've never, ever, ever had a client say, I want you to sugarcoat it. I don't like straight talk. Now you've been invited to be straight. And you tell them, if you conceal one of these things, if you innocently don't spend the time to go think about them and remember them so you forget them, if you don't take the time to talk to your family and friends to say, am I leaving anything out? And you go in and you think they're not going to find it, they're going to find it, and it's going to destroy your case. Your case has got a value potentially of $1 million because they've hurt you that bad, not because it's a gold mine, not because jackpot justice, because they've taken from you far more than $1 million worth of your health. But you can put it all in a big bin in your backyard and put lighter fluid on, throw a match on it, and burn it up. If you don't tell them about priors, subsequents, period. That's simple. And then you get in depo and they start to mess up. Take a break. Take them outside. Bring a reminder that you can tap and they know that means, by God, this is what we talked about. Straighten up. You're not going to get in trouble. I shouldn't say that. I don't know everybody's ethics rule in every state. I have a hard time imagining that you would get in trouble preventing your client from saying something that appears untrue. You're not coaching them to say something to help that's untrue. You're preventing an untruth from occurring. That's your duty. Don't let it happen. I hear lawyers say, God, and they just made it worse and worse and worse, and it went on for like an hour and a half. I'm like, why didn't you step in? That's on you. You got to protect your client from mistakes like that. Have them write them all out. Make sure you meet with them. You can't get them ready until you've got your ready. You need to know. You need to give them the assignments to go find out. Ask family, friends. You need to look at the records. You need to look at every damn record the defense got. And if they haven't sent it over, you make sure, hey, you got these records. You were supposed to send me a copy. Where are they? Oh, I'll bring them to the depot. No, you won't. I want them over to my office today, or we're canceling the depot. Period. There's going to be no surprises. So you've gotten ready. You've gotten your client ready. Now your client didn't step in a pitfall. What else do you do to get your client ready to put their best foot forward? You don't leave them out to themselves. And I know I sound like I'm up on my high horse preaching to you. Please don't take this as offense, like I'm saying, bunch of dummies. This is all stuff we've all done. We've all done it. I don't mean to sound preachy. I know it because I've done it. I know too many people have done it. I'm just trying to, I'm passionate about this because I know what difference it makes in the outcome at trial, in the value of your case. So please don't realize my tone. I don't want to sound like I'm, scolding a class. That's not my intent at all. But let me continue on with it. We can't leave our clients to walk into this weird setting called a depot and have them give a good answer to how it's impacting them. Why? Clients will, it's a defense mechanism. If you're living with round the clock discomfort and it flares and up and down, pilot light pain, flare ups, making little choices all day, you think you walk around going, gosh, every little one of those things that bother me, or I do differently, or I do, but I pay a price for it, or I make a decision, do I risk the price? Maybe I pay it, maybe I don't. If they walk around and thought about that all the time, they would be in deep, dark depression. You don't think about it. You try to forget about it as best you can. And what else? It becomes such a baseline routine that you don't remember. That's why people show up and say, I can't golf. That's what's wrong. I can't snow ski once a year. That's what's wrong. It's because it's the big thing that jumps out that they haven't forgotten about. And they're not thinking about all those little things. And why would we ever not put our best foot forward? We meet with our client. We explain what I just explained. We give them a journal and say, I'm giving you a homework assignment. I want you to keep track of all the little things. We give them examples, not to coach them, but to show them the types of things. I get out of bed different now. I don't hop out, I roll out slow. I brush my teeth different. I change lanes and look at my blind spot different. I decide on how I interact with my child, just how physical. When I jog or run, I do it the same way sometimes, but I know the price I'm going to pay. Other times I take it easy, and it's a decision. I'm sick of taking it easy. I push it, I pay the price. I know what's coming, but it's my choice. And I make all these little choices. Other times I back it down or skip it. Why? I got a busy day. I just don't want to be dealing with this, flared up. I can do the pilot light. I don't want the flare up. And I make all these little choices all the time. I still can do things. I go to the movies, but it's a little different experience. I'm not telling you I don't enjoy it. I still go and laugh at the lines and ooh, at the scary stuff, but I'm in there and it's in the back of my mind a little, and not always, but sometimes I'm thinking, gosh, what I would give to be back the way I used to be. And what else? What are you scared about in the future? And they keep a journal, they bring it to you. And you give them examples. You tell them, I also want to know your frustrations and things that this injury does to you. I think about, not often because I try not to think about it, but I can't help it. I do sometimes think, gosh, I wish it was back the way it was. And how does it make you feel? Sad, really sad. And what about the future? I try not to think about it, but I can't help it. What do you think about? Well, I'm worried as I get older. Everyone knows as you get older, the natural aging process, you get aches and pains. And I'm worried what it's going to mean when I got this already and I'm, 40. What's it going to do when I'm 60? I worry it's going to get worse and worse, and all those little choices I make and a lot of things I can still do that I may not be able to do as much, and it may start really interfering a lot with the doing part of it. I worry I'm going to need surgery. I put it off. I'm afraid I can't, but it's going to put a point I can't put it off anymore. How do you feel about, being a suggestion that you're not really hurt, that you're exaggerating or faking? How does that suggestion make you feel? Sick in my stomach, frustrated, because I know you can't see it. And I am getting on with things, so I look active. But it's just, you know, honestly, it's insulting and it's hurtful and it's very frustrating. Where's all that coming? What is all that? Best foot forward. Now imagine if rather than prepping your client for depot, all of that played out at trial. Think how many of those things that I say to you, ooh, I'd like, that would be good in a case. Why isn't it in your case? Not because it doesn't exist. It's not going to exist the way I said it. It's going to exist like that, because that's what chronic pain's like. So we take the time to get ourselves ready, to read the medical records. What's the pitfall? Well, before this crash, did you ever have, well, I mean, your back, you know, you ever had bad, your back would hurt, like, you know, bad, like a 9 or 10? Nope. I got a medical record a year before. Bad, my back's killing me today. Scale of 9, 1 to 10, 9. Utterly and completely avoidable. They didn't just lie. They didn't remember it. What if we prepare ourselves to prepare them and we look at all of that in advance? We get all the medical records. We have a good medical summary done for us. Either create it yourself or have it done. It's worth every cent of it. Have your assistant or paralegal do it. Have a nurse or paralegal do it and pay them, whatever. It's golden. Then you look at it, you study it, you go, this is what the defense is going to do. You show it to your client, you talk about it, and you talk about what the best honest answer is. What are we doing? Avoiding the pitfall. How's it going to look at trial if you don't avoid the pitfall and you step in it? Like your client's a liar when they're not? What's it going to do to the value of your case? Way down. They go, can't wait to try this one. We're going to make them look like a liar. All preventable. All preventable. But the way to motivate yourself to truly prevent it is to always think, how's it going to sound in trial if my client steps in it versus if my client doesn't? And how do I get this wonderfulness versus this horribleness? How do I get the wonderful? I think about discovery as trial prep. I think about the depot of my client as best foot forward and avoiding pitfalls. It's those two things. That's it. But we do it with gusto. We do it with joy and excitement because we know how miserable that defense lawyer is going to be when we don't have all their little pitfalls. We don't step in them. And besides that, they don't get to go away and dictate. They were a jackass. They were a liar. And the only thing they could say that they missed was snow skiing once a year. Oh! Put your wallet in your pocket, adjuster. Woo! See, this is why you pay me. You go in saying, son of a bitch, you're getting none of that. Not on my watch. Because I prepared myself to prepare my client, and I did it without, I'm not grumbling about it. I'm doing because I'm getting ready for trial, and I'm going to do it as I see it as an opportunity to make the other side miserable and do what I was called to do, which is get maximum justice from my client. And I can probably get it in settlement because they're going to be miserable. You talk hard to your clients about how they dress. You tell them you dress like you're going to an interview for your dream job that's going to pay you more money than you ever dreamed you'd ever have. And it happens to be at a conservative CPA office. We're not talking about at the tattoo parlor where you can dress however you want. And then you tell them what you mean by that. You give them examples. You have them go home and put on what they're planning to wear and put on their FaceTime and show you. Zoom, hell, we can Zoom it nowadays. And if it isn't right, you say, no, that's not what I had in mind. It looks nice, really nice, but not for what I need tomorrow. You're not insulting. And you tell them, don't be the big chum and laugh and friendly to them. They're the enemy and it'll look silly. And this is not lighthearted, this is serious. But don't be a jackass. Be professional, be businesslike, answer their questions. Don't give them a hard time. Don't be evasive. Listen, pay attention to what they're asking. Don't get in a hurry. I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna do that and say something stupid. Never fails. Slow down. Let them ask the question, think your answer, think about it, give your answer. Not big, long pauses, but take your time. Give brief answers. Don't volunteer. Don't ever conceal. If you don't understand, you tell them, don't ever say, I don't understand, when you do understand, because what you remember may help me. Tell them the truth. Now, those are the general rules. They're essential rules. If you start misbehaving, I'm going to fuss at you. I'm going to tell you, hey, listen, don't be argumentative. You can be mad at me, but I'm going to do it. Not because I'm a jerk, because I care about your case and my job's to protect you. Please don't make me do that. If I ask you questions at the end to rehab, they call it, it's going to be because I'm not planning to ask you a single question. If I'm asking you questions, you screwed something up. So listen to me. I'm trying to get you back to the truth. I know it's true because we talked about it. And now you've given the impression you're not telling the truth. And I know how it's going to hurt you at trial. Why are you doing all this? Because you're thinking through the lens of trial. They can't, you can. It makes it more fun. It makes it better. So your client comes out, best foot forward. They don't say I couldn't ski. They start telling all these little things. They don't step in traps. Now the value of your case went way up. They were picking up the dictaphone and saying, sorry, but you know, this lady she was a really good witness. I'd say she was an A, and we really didn't get much out of it. She came clean about everything, and value goes up. If they say, well, the value ought to go up, but we ain't paying you that much because we're cheap. Fine, see you trial, because you know your client's going to do good. They've already done it once. It's not hard to reproduce it. You listen for things like always get surveillance if you can. So in Florida, they can hold back on us, but you get the Facebook posts and things, all those things. Would you get on a ride at Disney? No. There they are at Disney. Ooh, Space Mountain or whatever the hell it is. It's on you. Because you're not thinking of it as trial prep that's fun and exciting and worth my energy and time. You're thinking of it as a task to be done with. If you can't get the surveillance, be on the lookout and tell your client to be on the lookout. When they start asking about specific stuff, they got surveillance. I had a lady one time that I represented and had RSD and her arm hurt, and it really was bad. I mean, she had a bad case RSD. I mean, it was cold to the touch, and it was a med mal case. But all of a sudden at the depot, they say, can you ever, for example, just for example, trying to figure out things you can do and can't do. Could you take wet blue jeans out of a washing machine before you put them on a clothesline and shake them? Who would ask that question if they didn't have it on film? But I told my client, you hear something wacky like that, tell them yes, because they got it. Unless it's not so. For God's sake, don't say, could you go out with a hammer and beat your arm? Well, that's a weird question. Yes, don't say it if it isn't so. But as soon as you hear one of those questions, you should be thinking, they have been following me and filming me, and they probably, if I do it, they got me on film. And for God's sake, don't get cute. Tell them the truth. And they said it, and I mean, I'm like trying to bump my client in my leg and everything else, and she goes, like a trooper. I do, because I do it. But if I showed you, I hold it with this hand, my good hand, hard. This one goes along for the ride. And I do it because my doctor said use it or lose it. Well, guess what? When the surveillance came, that's exactly what it showed. But imagine trial. She said no. That's $1 million verdict. That's $1 million down the tube, because a whole bunch of my case relied on her credibility. That's what I mean about you see it through the lens of trial. But now let's go on from, I've been hovering all on our client, but you know, so much of it relies on it. Let's talk for a minute about the defendant's expert. Remember I said there are two things for our witnesses: best foot forward, avoid pitfalls. There are two things when it's the defense experts or the defense witnesses. They're about sound bites and intel. You are gathering sound bites or intel. That's really all you're doing. Intel means I don't want to get ambushed or surprised at trial. I don't want to hear it for the first time at opening. And we have a witness that says, you go, shit, I want to know. Or you know what their expert's going to say, but you didn't close the circle by saying, are those all your opinions? And all of a sudden you're all ready and there's a brand new opinion. There's an MRI out there that will absolutely prove it wasn't caused, this birth injury was not caused at labor. It pre-existed. It was there for at least a week before delivery. So whatever you say my doctor did to delay delivery by not doing a C-section is irrelevant. The brain damage was done. I had that happen to us. And our lawyer had closed the circle. They argued, yeah, judge, but, and said for some reason wasn't enough. And the judge let them do it. We lost. And to the judge's credit, he granted a new trial. And he said, I should have never let it in. That became the feature of the case. I've now studied it. You should have revealed it. That was ambush. That was wrong. And we got a new trial. That's what intel is. Had we not closed the loop, it should have never come out, but we got it back because we closed the loop. That's what I mean, gathering intel. You want to know what they're going to say. You want to know all what they're going to say. And not that you're trying to find more they're going to say. You want to be able to put a bow on it and say, all right, that is the universe I got to deal with. And the other is sound bites. You don't want rambling long answers at trial. Why? Anybody's ever tried to impeach somebody with a rambling long answer, you can't do it. You go read. They object. The judge says it's an impeachment. The judge says it's not. You say, I'm getting to it. He says, get to it. And then you skip to it. And they say, Your Honor, you can't start in the middle of the question. You go, okay, all right, I'll pick up where I was. And then you go, please hurry. You get to your big moment. You read it. Nobody knows what the hell the question was. There's no drama, there's no impeachment, and you've been made to look bad. Why? Because you had a great answer, but you didn't think about trial. How am I going to use this at trial? I'm not here to take a deposition for the fun of it. I'm not here because I'm going to, like an insurance defense lawyer who's billing by the hour and don't give a damn because this is good money. I'm a contingency fee lawyer. I'm here for one reason. I'm getting ready for trial. And what parts do I need sound bites for? What do I need a sound bite for? Really, two main parts, opening and cross-exam. I want to be able to say, sir, you said so-and-so. He goes, da-da-da-da. I heard you say this on direct. I did. Remember in your deposition, page so-and-so, line so, and the following question answered. Boom, dead opposite. Were you telling the truth? Yeah. You look over at the jury, look back at him. All right, let me ask you something else. He does it again. Remember the following page and answer. Boom! Were you telling the truth that time? Yes. Will you try a little harder? Jackson arguing, maybe you don't do that. I don't know. The point is, it's devastating. And it's just a mess if you leave that good answer buried. Call it back. Take the time. Ask it, sir, in there you said this. I want to make sure that's what you mean to say. Well, blah, 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 more of the same. More of the same. Sir, I'm entitled to an answer. I will stay here till midnight and we can come back tomorrow. I'll get the judge on the phone. We'll suspend the deposition if need be and get the judge. I'm not going to sit here and allow you to bury your testimony and all of this extra stuff. Mr. Mitnik, ask him a question, quit badgering him, or I'm going to get the judge. I say, that you want to get him? Let's get him. I'll get the damn phone. I'll be glad to play this to the jury. I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times they go, ask again. Because they don't want to be there till midnight. Ask again. Are you telling me da 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 da? Yes. Soundbite. Why did I do all that? Because I know what it's going to do for me at trial. And I know the difference between a soundbite and a pile of words. That's the difference. It's so much more fun. Because you know when I'm doing that, why I will stay till midnight? Because I'm not saying, I just want to get out of here. I hate taking depots. I'm going, this is, God damn, I'm having fun. Excuse me, I shouldn't use the Lord's name, Dane. I'm sorry. Damn, I'm having fun. How about that? So let me give you some more quick examples of their expert. And I'll start with car crash stuff. And I know I hate to wear out the car crash, but it's just so universal. Most lawyers do it. I'm going to do something special on med mal. Honest, I have lawyers email, you can never do med mal. I do a lot of med mal. I love med mal cases. Very difficult, but I love them. I got a bunch of good stuff for med mal. I just have limited time, and there's so few people still doing med mal. I'm sorry to you med mal folks. If you want me to do med mal and you're out there, send me just a little email to kmitnik@forthepeople.com, and don't put a C if it's not Nick, N-I-C-K. No C, I won't get it. K-M-I-T-N-I-K @forthepeople.com. If you're not on my listserv, say I'd like to be on your listserv. I've got 10 now, and there are a bunch more coming of these little nuggets that are page and a half to no more than 2 pages of a bunch of really good strategies that are brand new, hot off the presses from this shutdown when I've had all this time to think and talk to our lawyers, and I've got a bunch of epiphanies. If you aren't on it, I'll send you those. Even if you are and you want to say, I really am interested in med mal one, I'd be curious to see how many folks there are that would attend. Because if there are enough folks, I will do one on it on here. If not, I'm gonna find somewhere. But anyhow, I'll do a little something here on med mal. But let me stick to car crash for right now. Here are some examples of sound bites from the doctor they hire to say your client's got a sprain, degenerative disc disease, you know, the typical stuff. No permanency, no need for something expensive like a surgery. No, that guy. I say that guy because I don't know I've ever seen one of these hired doctors for the defense that's a woman. That I'm in a car crash case. I have in med mal some very, very tough defense witnesses. Maybe that's a tribute to women. They got better sense than some of these damn men to do that. But anyhow, here are just a couple examples. Sprain strain. Now that sounds like, okay, no big deal. What if he says sprain strain or says may have a sprain strain? What's the difference whether he says based on reasonable medical probability, it's my opinion there's a sprain strain, or he says may have a sprain strain? Who cares? We don't agree anyhow. It's BS. Think about trial. Think about a soundbite. Think about opening. I'll tell you the opening, and then let's go back to the question. Opening statement. They're going to be showing you a bunch of pictures suggesting, you know, the rear end here, and there may be, maybe not, some suggestion that, look, you know, there's not a lot of visible property damage, and that, you know, that wouldn't cause a serious injury. It wouldn't injure somebody. It's just not capable of causing injury. And I got so many strategies on that. I don't want to distill it to one, but I'm not talking about voir dire. I'm not talking about the hit in the back of the chair and the example of little kids shoving in the back. I'm using one, and why that doesn't add up, why it's about the unexpected, awkward, jarring, not the crush of metal. I just want to talk about one point to make how important the discovery piece is. But folks, you don't need to worry about that, because let me tell you what the evidence is going to be. They hired this guy. They pay him all this money. They use him all the time. 80% of his income, 20% of his income, 15%, 10% of his income comes from being hired in lawsuits. And guess what? The evidence shows he's hired 95% by one side, the defense side. Heck, he's worked for these lawyers a bunch. And with all of that, and I'm going to tell you some of the things he says, but let me tell you one thing he says is really, I want to tell you, we know is coming because he's already told us. We took his sworn statement. He is going to tell you that he has concluded after looking at all the medical records, all the depositions, he's looked at photographs, he's looked at everything in the whole universe you can think of in this case. And on behalf of the side that hired him, those lawyers over there, the defense, he has reached the conclusion that this crash, in fact, caused an injury. Now, he says it's just a little old sprained strain, and we're going to talk about why that's dead wrong based on the evidence. But for this point, folks, my point is, he says this injury caused a crash based on reasonable medical probability. That's his diagnosis. This crash caused an injury. He just calls it a sprained strain. So hopefully we're not going to hear any suggestion that this crash couldn't cause an injury, because the guy they're bringing is going to tell you it did, in his opinion. How powerful is that? Now let's step back in time to the depot. What if he says, which they like to say, it may have been a sprained strain. You think I could do that off May? Think about trial. They're going to get up and say, I don't know what Mr. Mitnik's talking about. He never said that was his diagnosis. He never concluded it. He simply said one of the possible explanations, it could be a little old sprained strain, but he never said it was. It may not have been. He comes. You go to cross him. Where's your soundbite? May have been. I don't know. If she's telling the truth, and she's had that pain at the moment of crash and it lasts for a while, then it probably was a sprained strain, but I don't know whether she's telling the truth. I'm not a lie detector. She may not have had any injury at all. I've lost all the momentum. I go to the depot and I get May, and trust me, they love running to May. Say, no, sir. Are you suggesting my client made it all up and is faking it, that she didn't have any pain? No. Well, then what do you attribute that pain to? Sprained strain. So it is not May. It is your conclusion based on reasonable medical probability that she did have a sprained strain. That's your likely conclusion after everything you looked at. Yeah. So it is your opinion she had a sprained strain based on reasonable medical probability. I just said that. Yes. Boom. Soundbite. Now you get him up on cross and you're starting to whoop his ass. And you say, sir, she had none of these problems before. For 5 years before, there's no medical record, no injection, no complaints of pain, no MRIs, no doctors talking about surgeries, none of that. In all those records for 5 years leading up to this, am I correct? Well, none I saw, sir. You got that big old stack you brought with it. To tell them why this is why I spent so much time and charged so much. Did you find a drop of ink in any of that suggesting that she had any neck pain in that 5-year period? No. Then she was in the crash. And according to you, got hurt in the crash. You call it just a sprained strain, but regardless of what you call it, you say that crash caused pain in her neck, period, from an injury sustained in the crash. Is that right? A sprained strain. I said a sprained strain. We're going to talk about that in a minute. You said sprained strain. She got hurt in the crash. I may have been, boom, may. Sir, you know there's a big difference between may and reasonable medical probability, don't you? You've been in a courtroom a lot. You know may means anything's possible. Reasonable medical probability means that's what your conclusion is. Your medical conclusion and diagnosis, right? Yes. And you just told this jury when I said you concluded based on reasonable medical probability that it was a neck injury in the crash that you called a sprained strain. You just said, no, it was just May. You remember in your deposition page, so-and-so, line so-and-so. Sir, question. So your conclusion was based on reasonable medical probability this was a sprained strain. Answer, yes. Did you say that? I did. So that is your conclusion, correct? Yes. Look at the jury. Aye. So let's move forward. So nothing before for 5 years. Hurt in this crash with pain in the neck. And then you say that for the next 12 weeks, when she went to the chiropractor, when she went to the emergency room, when she went to the chiropractor, when they got the MRI, and when they sent her to go see the neurosurgeon, every bit of that you say was reasonable, related, and necessary as a result of the injury sustained in this crash, according to you, right? If he waffles, you got a sound bite. Maybe by then he's learned his lesson. He goes, correct. And then you say at some point, about 12 weeks out, went to bed with pain in the neck from the crash. Woke up the next morning with the identical, exact pain in the exact place in her neck. Only now you say it's completely unrelated. Now that's all gone. Now it's must be something else, because now that exact same pain is now the crash is all just a big coincidence. I got that right? Well, what the hell is he going to answer? That's looking at it through the lens. If you know that's coming, you'll fight for those sound bites, and you'll have fun fighting them for them, because you're doing lawyering. You're not doing grunt work. You're doing trial prep, not discovery. See the difference? So those, in asking the question, so you agree that the ambulance and the chiro and the reasonable, related, and necessary as a result of the injury sustained in the crash that you call a sprain strain. Fight, 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 fight. Soundbite. Nope. Yes, but. Blah, 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 yes, but. Blah, 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 yes, but. Blah, blah, blah. Finally, yes. Let them say, well, I don't know that it was necessary. I don't think it was unreasonable to do, but I don't think that it was in it, that it was related. I don't know I'd go that far. You remember your deposition, blah, 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 blah. Did you say it? Or you got it on video in his big old screen. He's having a look back. Was that you? Was that you? Yes, it was me. Well, did we all hear right? Yeah. Were you under oath? Yeah. We didn't sneak up on you and spring those questions, did we? What do you mean? We scheduled it a month in advance. You picked the date. You knew we were coming, right? Yeah. You knew what we were going to ask you, basically. Not everything. I didn't say everything. You knew we were going to ask these. Yeah. You knew that you could meet with the other lawyer and did meet with him beforehand. I did. So this wasn't a surprise with ambush question in the hall like you didn't have time to think. And you knew it was going to be typed up and put a formal booklet called a deposition. Every single word verbatim, exactly what you said and answer. And you're going to have pages, and each one's going to have a line on each page, line 2, 3, 4, so we can read page so-and-so, line so-and-so. Yes. And you knew we would have a copy of it and study it, because you've been in courtrooms, and you know if you change your story, we're going to get up and show you changed it, right? And you were under oath just like you were here, swore to tell the truth, swear to God. Yes. And that's what you said there. Yes. And you said the opposite here. I don't know why I'd say the opposite. I agreed to on whether it was necessary and related. You said you wouldn't go that far. I did. But you were telling the truth when you're sworn to tell the truth in your formal statement we call a deposition. I was. So it was related. Yes. None of that happens if I go in and go, I just want to get it over with. It happens when I got a sound bite. And I had fun rolling up my sleeves and getting that sound bite because I know how golden it's going to be. I'll give you one more and we'll move on. You're taking that same treating doctor. And you ask him this question. Are you suggesting my client's malingering? Wait till he says something a little that's making him looking a little aggressive. Are you suggesting my client, and say it like They're hardwired to disagree. He's going to say no, and he's going to be afraid. Trap, he's trying to make me look unreasonable. Now, there's occasionally one they'll say, yeah, and I think they're malingering. But they almost always will say, no, don't ask. You're not suggesting, they're going to say the opposite. Yes. Are you suggesting my client's malingering? No. Move on. You got your soundbite. If you get a hogwash, get a soundbite. Why go through the trouble? It could be another 5 minutes, for God's sake, which is a long time if you have to do that on a bunch of questions. Well, you don't have to do on every question. A lot of it's intel gathering, remember? I just need to know what it is and understand it. But on this stuff that I'm using, I'm going to gather a soundbite by design because I've prepared myself and I know what I want and I got a checklist for it. And you go in and you ask and you get it. Why does that matter? Let's bring it from depot to trial. Same opening statement. And folks, sometimes people worry or concerned that someone could be exaggerating or faking. You don't need to worry about it in this case because here's what the evidence is going to show. That same guy we talked that they handpicked and hired and paid all this money to on behalf of the defense to come give you medical testimony. Here's what he says. He looks for people faking and exaggerating. He's seen it over the years. He knows what to look for. He's a professional doctor who does these examining people in lawsuits. So God knows he knows what he's looking for. And he knows if he can find it, that would really help the side that hires him all the time and is paying them. And he had all these records and everything, all of it. And he got to talk to her, interview her, take a history, read all the records in advance, read the depositions. He was ready when he questioned her. He laid hands on her and did testing and examined her. And here's what he's going to tell you. There's no faking or exaggerating going on with Miss Jones. There's a big fancy medical word. It's called malingering, but it means faking or exaggerating. So you can take that off your word list. I assume no one's going to suggest she is, given that from the defense, but we'll see. But that's what the evidence is going to show from their witness. What power? You're just killing them. And in depot, when you get that answer, you just did the killing. They just don't know they're dead yet. They're like, Fear of the Walking Dead. They're zombies. They don't know what's coming, but you do. That's winning before beginning. That's what this whole idea of winning before beginning is about. Let's move on. I'll do a quick med mal. You got to get your expert to say. This is for any case where you say they should have done something and they didn't. You should have kept them in the hospital. You should have run this other test. And they didn't. And they've hired an expert who says standard of care doesn't require it. You need 2 little gems, sound bites out of discovery to bring this powerful thing together at trial. Your expert needs to say standard of care required them to have kept them in the hospital. Standard of care required them to run this test. Then add this one thing. At the very least, if they weren't going to do it, would say absolutely should have. Standard of care required them to tell the patient that was an option. Now, that's not a lack of informed consent case. Lack of informed consent is where you do something and fail to properly inform of the risk. Lack of informed consent doesn't apply when you don't do something. Then you need this out of the defense expert. You would agree, while you say the standard of care did not require them to put them in the hospital or run this test, you're not suggesting that it would have been malpractice to do the test or to put them in the hospital, are you? They did not have, I know you're saying they didn't have to. I'm just saying, if they'd have said, I'm gonna, for whatever reason, you wouldn't go, that's below the standard of care. My God, that's oh, no, I'm not saying that. So you agree, if that option had been followed, it wouldn't be below the standard of care to put them in the hospital or to run the test. No. Now you got a soundbite. You got 2 sound bites. What's that come into at trial? That expert comes to stand. He's really good. And he's really pitching hard. You didn't need to put him in the hospital. You didn't need to do that test. And now you go to cross them. They are not going to break down the guy from Johns Hopkins or Harvard or Duke or Yale or wherever. It is very unlikely they flew down here, going to take the stand and go, you got me, it's below the standard. What about this? Sir, would you agree? I hear you loud and clear. You're saying to this jury that it was acceptable to not keep him in the hospital. All right? That's what you're saying. I've said it a bunch and it's true. Not under the standard of care. I said, okay. Would you agree with this? There was absolutely not going to be anything wrong with putting him in the hospital. That wouldn't be malpractice or below the standard, right? Well, and you get some nonsense. Now you impeach them because you got it. Or maybe they just give it to you. But if they give you a hard time, you got a soundbite, you impeach them. But that's not the biggie. Here's the biggie. So I want to be clear. Certainly you would agree with, and you didn't ask this one in depot. You didn't need to because he wouldn't have answered. You want him to give you no live. You want to wrestle with this one live. It's the wrestling that's paying off. Certainly you would agree with me, since that was an option that was acceptable, that the doctor, under the standard of care, using reasonable care, doing his job, he should have at least told the patient that was an option and include her in the decision. It's her life. You agree with that? I don't understand. Well, I don't understand's coming because he realizes he's trapped. And ultimately, he's going to have to look that jury in the eye. And I say, look, tell them, it's your answer. It's perfectly acceptable and fine to take off the table, make your own decision as a doctor. I'm taking this option off the table, and I'm not going to say a word to the client. Rather than keep the client in the loop, you're saying it's perfectly acceptable to keep them in the dark. You're going to have jurors going, buddy, I was with you on you didn't have to put them in, but by God, you ought to tell them and let them be involved. And all these young doctors you send out in the world you've been talking about, are you telling us you teach them, keep those patients in the dark? No, don't put them in the loop when there's another option available there's nothing wrong with, that might have benefit. There's just no way out of it. That doesn't work unless you're thinking like trial, and you're thinking, I'm in trial prep. I need the sound bites. All right, that's my med-mal little tidbit. I got a bunch more of those, but we're going to move on from that. All right, so here's another one. Corporate reps and discovery in a slip and fall case. Slip and fall case. In a grocery store or business, let's say grocery store. What are they going to say? We know what they're going to say. Well, number one, they'll try to say it wasn't there long enough, it wasn't there, all that. But I'm not going to get into proving they were on notice. That's a different issue. But let's attack their position that we have 2 policies. Number one, we do sweeps, meaning someone comes through there every 20 minutes to check. Number 2, everybody's responsible for watching the floor that's employed in our store all the time. All right, let's think about that as trial prep. Let's think about that through the lens of what's going to happen at trial. And what can I get to have these we've been doing in that setting? Well, how about this? How about you ask them about this? Everybody's watching, which, by the way, that is a policy that is designed to protect the store, not the customer. It is useless because when everybody is responsible, nobody's responsible. When it's your job and only your job, you do it or you get fired. When it's everybody in the store's job, you know what? I'm the stock guy. I'm running late. I'm trying to get these last boxes up so I can get off my shift and be done and don't get yelled at. And I see the produce manager walking behind me. You go, well, he's coming. He'll look. They ain't looking. Produce manager's thinking, I'm a produce manager. That's a stock boy. He can look. And nobody looks. So how do you turn that? You know that, and you know that's going to be a theme of yours, to attack the ridiculous. And you know you're going to say that's window dressing. That's papering over problem. That's protecting the store, not the customer, because it doesn't work. When everyone's responsible, no one's responsible. When you explain it. What do you need out of the, quote, discovery, or what I prefer to call workup phase? Well, how about you ask a corporate rep and you do requests for productions, and you say things like this. All right, so that's your, everybody's got to look. Yeah, all right, let's talk about that. How do you get that information? How do you teach that to people? Well, it's in the employee handbook. Well, do you have an orientation and meet with them? Yeah. Do you tell them? Maybe they say, yeah. Let's say they say, yeah. We tell them, and then there's a, what do they do with them? Where's the employee handbook? Well, it's in the break room. All right. What do you do to follow up to make sure people are routinely reading it? What do you mean? Well, the people have to read it once a week, once a month. How often do they have to read it? After they're oriented and go to work? Well, they don't. So you don't have any policy requiring them to look at it. No. Do you have any evidence whatsoever that people do look at it? Some log, some video showing them going and looking? Do they have to swear an oath that I did look? Anything? Okay. So you have nothing to check if anyone ever goes to the employee handbook to look about that. No, but we told them. All right, how many times you tell them? Then, all right, how often do you follow up with that? Do you have follow-ups after you've been there a month, after you've been there for 2 months, to ask, are you doing it, and make sure they're doing it and stay on? No. So you're doing nothing for enforcement. Well, I wouldn't say nothing. All right, what are you doing for enforcement? Da, 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 da. Okay, so you're doing nothing for enforcement of that policy. Well, I don't think it requires enforcement. It's common sense. We told them once. You don't have to keep telling someone. Your job's to always watch. Everyone is responsible. How many times I need to tell them, Mr. Mitnik? I mean, that's kind of silly. Okay, is that I'm getting a soundbite? God dang it. Okay, so is your answer, we do nothing to enforce it? Finally, yes, soundbite. Do you do anything to monitor it? And if so, what? What would we do to monitor it? Well, do you have anybody whose job it is, look, we're going to spot check, and someone's going to stand in the store and watch where people's eyes are. Are they watching the ground or not? And we're going to reprimand them. Do you have a written policy for that? No. Well, do you do it? Not that I know of. Okay, how about this? Do you have a policy to review all those cameras, to watch employees, to see if they're looking at the ground when they're walking around, or their heads up and they're not? No. Your knowledge, you've never done that. No. To your knowledge, has it ever been discussed? Not that I know of. You see where that's going to play in trial? You're calling that corporate rep, rapid fire. So you understand, if you tell everybody in not giving one person the job, there's a concern. You've heard the saying, if everybody's responsible, no one's responsible. You've already explained that to the jury and voir dire and other. I never heard of it. Okay. Well, let's just talk about it. Once you tell them when they sign up, in fact, you never again come back to that subject with them. Well, I don't impeach. You never again reteach it. Why not? Impeach. You do nothing to enforce it. Now they're wise, and I better remember what was in the debit. No, not that I recall. Not that you recall. The answer is no, is it not? No. In fact, you do nothing to monitor it. Nothing. Well, I don't know what I could do. Oh, really? How about having someone just watch? Were they looking down or up? How about just having somebody in security to do a little every now and then, once a week check? And if we got a problem, we're going to retrain. You're not watching film to see where their eyes are at all, ever. No, you never even talked about it. No. So that's the policy we're hearing about, that you're saying, oh, you really met your responsibility. Even though you know things fall on the floor all the time. Even though you know when things fall on the floor, because you've asked this in depth and got sound bites. When things fall on the floor, it's like ice to a lot of people. Even though you know if people go down, that's a hard surface they're hitting. It's dangerous to go down on that surface. Even though you know they can't look where they're going because they're pushing a cart and couldn't see if they wanted to, and besides, everything's up here. And you know all that. And you know it happens frequently. And you know you own the store and it's your duty to make it safe. And this is what you're telling us makes it safe. I got that right? See the devastation that you wouldn't get if you didn't think of discovery like, what could I do at trial? And what do I need so I can do it? That's really powerful stuff. How about this? When you get the surveillance from the cameras in the sky, don't just get the ones of the actual incident if they captured it. Get anyone you can get your hands on anywhere in their store. Get them for as long as you can. Because guess what? You're going to do the exercise they don't do. You're going to go, imagine the cross. Oh, no, I believe it's very effective. Everyone's responsible. I think people take it very seriously. I know I do. When I'm walking around, I'm looking down. And then you sit up there for about 30 minutes. Do you see anybody? That guy works in the store. And you take a depot. Somebody with the most knowledge tell me which one of these people employs. They usually got a little apron or something on. There's one, right? Yep. Stock boy, yep. Is he looking? Where's he looking? Where's he looking? Where's he looking? Does he look? Show me when he looks down. All right. Here comes the assistant manager. Where? Here comes the meat department manager. Here comes the slicer from the deli. Can you show me somebody? Is that you? Where are you looking? I had one of my own lawyers ask in our firm, man, that's so smart. What made you think of that? I said, because I think about everything as trial. That's why. Everything to me is trial. And I'm thinking, what can I do to them at trial? And then I just step it back. That's why in my next book, Deeper Cuts, I'm going to bring it all back formally in the book. Think of the power of that stuff. So, all right, I got a bunch more on that. We'll move on from that subject. Here's another question while you got them there, by the way, just so I don't forget. Have you ever considered putting a no slick surface on there? Well, you use a carpet, you can't push the carts. Well, are there carpets that you can push your cart on? I don't know. I don't think. Have you ever looked into it? No. Have you ever researched it? No. Have you ever looked at putting some other something that you put over the top of that concrete so that it's not slick the minute something hits it and turns into ice? No. Now you got cavalier and don't care. What if the answer is yes? Why didn't you do it? Too expensive. Now you got cheap. Cheap, cavalier don't care. There's no good answer because we know they didn't do it. I don't want this to turn into here's how we try a case in a slip and fall in a grocery store. I'm using it as another form of example of how to turn the discovery phase into the winning phase and a phase that you can't wait to do. And you do it extraordinarily well because you understand just how important it is and that it is valuable, extraordinarily valuable use of your time. All right, let me leave this subject altogether. Sorry, I've covered a whole lot of ground. There's a lot more in here, and I'm actually skipping a bunch of stuff here. Why don't we talk about your treating doctor? We talked about your client. We've talked about the defense witnesses. Let's go back to our witnesses for just a minute. Preparing, you're the treating doctor. Once again, you got to prepare yourself to prepare them. Once again, now we're with our witnesses. So what are the two questions? When it's their witnesses, it's about gathering sound bites, gathering intel. When it's our witnesses, it's about putting our best foot forward and avoiding pitfalls. So what do we want to do in preparing a meeting with the treating doctor? Well, we prepare ourselves. We've already met with our client, prepared our client. Our client's been deposed. We save all of these lists we make. The pitfall list, always keep a running list. You don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time. You have the running list from your client's prep, the pitfalls that you got because you had a good medical record summary that you could work on, because you went back and looked at the interrogatory answers of your client so that you don't get surprised with it, that you looked at surveillance so you could get your hands on it, that you looked at the Facebook stuff, that you got employment records if you're making an employment claim, that you got any workers' comp records that may have some stuff in it, and you studied them. You made lists of potential pitfalls. You made a list after your client did the homework assignment on all the little things. Those lists live and breathe in this case, so you don't have to start over. So now you're getting ready for the expert, your treater. You pull out your pitfalls. You pull out your medical summary and your pitfalls. Some came from depots, some came from medical records. Maybe, hopefully not, but maybe a few more came out of your client's depot. Add to the list of pitfalls. Now you sit down and you make sure that you're ready to meet with your expert. Now, the treating doctor is not going to typically give you a ton of time. He's not your client, so you're limited. But that doesn't mean you can't ask to say, listen, I want to know your feelings on this so I don't hear them for the first time in trial. You're not coaching them. You want to know. You have a right to know. You can meet with them. There's nothing wrong with meeting with a witness. And you go through. Here are some of the issues in the medical records I expect they're going to ask you about. You know, my client has told me, or here's what hers. You got the list of the best foot forward. By the way, always put on the best foot forward with your client all the things that bring them to life in a positive light. I take care of my grandmother. You know, I was in the military. You know, everybody has a goodness in their life. Find the goodness, bring them to life, best foot forward. But now you're meeting with your expert and your treater. You go through the tab medical records and what they're going to say, look, on this visit, so-and-so. On this visit, it said, you know, a year before, back pain 9. But then you flip forward a month later, same doctor, back pain gone. No records in between. There's nothing wrong with saying they may show you this, but here's some medical records past that I want you to be aware of. I'll leave them with you. Try to get them to him in advance so he can read them all, but you at least show them. So you're anticipating pitfalls, and you meet with the doctor. You don't coach him. You don't tell him what to say. You just make him aware so he doesn't get ambushed. There's nothing wrong with that. Look, if you're in a jurisdiction you're not allowed to meet with them, then forget what I'm saying. I would never advise you against it. But the jurisdictions I know, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, in Florida, we got a jury instruction on believability of witnesses. Now it's fairly new that says, you know, there's nothing wrong with a lawyer meeting with a witness. You're not to make anything of it, or words to that effect. But then you want to make sure with him, you on your list, that you cover the key points. Causation, if there's a new aggravation, and what your client says about it. And this is much worse. He's going to have it in his records, hopefully. Permanency, the big legal things you need to beat DV. You're thinking trial, directed verdict. That sick moment when they're moving for directed verdict, you're going, well, I hope there isn't something I forgot. I hope there's no problem. You have your directed verdict list when you meet with him. I'm going to need, assuming it is his opinion, I need for directed verdict that this injury, in my opinion, based on reasonable medical probability, was caused by the crash, or at least it substantially contributed to it. that these medical expenses are reasonable, related, and necessary. If there's a life care plan, that I've looked at the life care plan and agree with it. You cover the legal language so they don't get tripped up on what reasonable certainty or medical probability means. If you need permanency or you typically want permanency, that it's my opinion based on reasonable medical probability that this is permanent. You explain that doesn't mean 100%, but that's more likely than not. If you got aggravation, you deal with aggravation. If you got surveillance, they're going to, or Facebook, they're going to parade around, or pictures of the car. Don't let them be surprised. Go on and show it to them. If it's changed his opinion, you want to know about it beforehand. And they won't have any bang for the buck when he's seen them, because typically they don't change an opinion because it's a trick anyhow. So that's working with your expert. Some other thoughts. This is just a little short thing, but I just wanted to hit a couple of these. It may not fit perfectly in this subject, but I wanted to just touch on them. If you're doing a video like a treating doctor for trial, for goodness sake, remind yourself, re-remind yourself, write it at the top of the legal pad. If you turn the page, rewrite it at the top of the legal pad. If you have to, put a little stickum and draw some heads on it and put it in front of you, because you want to always think the jury's in the room. If you do not, that video will be played, because I've done it, and you will be sitting there going, gosh, I went on and on and on about this. Why didn't I would have never done this in front of the jury. Always think this is for trial. If it's a videotape for trial as opposed to discovery, be tight and crisp. Think that jury's sitting there watching, getting angry if you waste time. Be prepared to hit it crisp, not fumbling and hunting for stuff. Have a plan of action just like it was for trial. When you do redirect, do it tight and strong like you would at trial. Think about objections. When they say object to form, leading, fix it. At trial, it's not an issue. Leading, sustain, you unlead it. Video for trial, objection, leading, you just ignore it. You have a hearing before trial, stricken. Judge, I need that. That's where he said that this was related. Mr. Bednick, it was a leading question. Why didn't you fix it? He objected. He put you on notice. Fix it. So you're always aware, both for style, brevity, time, and objections, jury, jury, jury. Because you know what happens? You walk in knowing it's a video for trial, and within 5 minutes, it becomes a discovery depo. And you would never take a discovery deposition in front of a jury. When you're assessing your client's value of their case, we want to win before beginning, but we also want to make sure that what we define winning before beginning is fair and reasonable for our client. Don't be stuck in these old, well, that case is worth X. Says who? Someone that trained you and they were probably wrong. An adjuster, a mediator. They know what you've been told, now you believe. How about, because guess what? The jury's none of those things. And guess what? It wouldn't be enough for you when you use these low ball. And you know where those ranges came from? 50 years ago. They were too low then, and everything else is worth, 100 times that, cost 100 times. The value of this case is the same. Sorry, little range. It was too low then. Now, 50 years later, no adjustment. And it's just gotten passed forward for it. It's not. That's not right. So how do you determine it? Ask yourself, what if it was me? What if it was me? John Morgan, the founding member of my law firm, said, ask a bunch of our lawyers, what's a pinky worth? Then he said, whoever shouted some lower number, he said, come on up here. I got an anesthesiologist, not even gonna hurt. And I got a surgeon will whack your pinky up. But I don't want to pay you X. I'm happy to pay it to you. I'm gonna give you that 100 grand because I'm gonna film it put it on the internet, pay-per-view, I'm gonna make a fortune. I'll make millions. Come on up. Everybody laughed. Point was made. It was you. And then he said, well, if you wouldn't come up, no, I ain't coming up. If you wouldn't, then why is it okay for your client? I'm going to add a little piece to that golden rule in yourself. There's nothing wrong with golden rule in yourself. You can't golden rule jury. You damn sure you can yourself, and you ought to. You owe it to your client. But there's another step to that. Do it going forward, not looking back. And by that, I mean, not what would it be worth to me if my finger was off. It already happened. We're just talking about how much is fair and reasonable. Because the minute you do it after the fact, you're still stuck in that sorry range that wasn't fair to start with. And all you do is push it to the high end of the range. We're trying to break out of those archaic, unfair ranges. Do it as if it hadn't happened yet. What would they have to pay you to have that happen to you? Not just this moment. Think about what it's going to be from the moment it happens, from the beginning to the bitter end, and everything in between. And now say, what would it be? Now, it's easy for you to say, well, yeah, but that's an unfair way to look at it because I wouldn't do it at any price. But it is fair because no one asked your client's permission. It was thrust into their life unnaturally by no fault of their own. No one came and said, let's have a discussion about what's fair and reasonable. It just happened. And if you do it looking forward, it allows you to break free from those pre-existing ranges. So reassess what's fair and reasonable. So when we say winning before beginning, we're setting what winning means, defining it in a true win, not a discounted, unfair win that came from not our fault. We were misled, but we were misled about what the case was worth. And if the defense says, wait, that's outside of the range, say, that ain't the range, that's your range, not mine. And they say, we'll see you in court. And you say, I'll see you in court. You know why? Because you treated the workup phase like a pretrial and you're ready for trial. You got a bruise-free case, which means you're going to have a bruise-free trial, which means in all likelihood, you're going to get what you told them was right. You negotiate down some, it's always a compromise, but the starting point is what you're going to be asking that jury for, which came out of this fresh new perspective of looking at what the case is worth, and you're fearless to go to trial. And guess what? When you do that, and they do it to you again, and you do that, then you go try one and you lose it, then you go back and do it again. Guess what? You go to the mediation and say, that isn't the range, you're crazy. You go, really? Boom, boom, boom. Let me tell you what I've done. You got me on one, but three. You think your numbers don't go up? I can tell you at more can they do. We've been doing that across the board. And we've proven the numbers were wrong because they were. We haven't figured out a way to jack the numbers up. We figured out they were discounted unfairly, and we're just now doing what's fair and reasonable. So another little one. Here's just a phrase. This really isn't a pretrial thing, but I just wanted to get it out there because I was going through some notes getting ready for this, and I saw it and I thought, I haven't said this, I don't think, in any one of these webinars, and I wanted to get it out there. You know, I'm big on analogies. When you're trying to talk about concurring cause, like your client had some underlying degenerative disc disease and this contributed substantially to it, or an aggravation case, or what I call as is justice. Your client wasn't a perfect specimen of health. Someone young, 18-year-old football player may have walked away. Your 50-year-old client that's got some normal aging in her spine. This crash caused a profound injury. It's a herniated disc. All folks ain't equal, but we believe in justice for all. So when you think of that, we're often having to put great emphasis on the concurring cause. Need not be the sole cause. It can be with some natural cause, so long as it contributes substantially to the outcome. Or an aggravation instruction, either one. Here's a great little analogy so jurors can understand it. it's like a bicycle built for two. You can have different forces that lead to the same ultimate destination. It's like a bicycle built for two. And that's an easy framework for jurors to get and understand. A concept that can be confusing, but is a concept that is extraordinarily important to us in proving our case. Where are we at time-wise? So what do we got?
About a half an hour left.
I did.
About 30 minutes, yep.
Folks, I'm about to go into a last subject before we finish. And I'm wondering if we got some questions, is now a good time to take a break? Because what always happens, I get at the end and we take no questions. So I want to give an opportunity. If we have some pending questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And if something sacrifices, I'll leave out this last piece and do the questions, and maybe there's time for both. But I don't want to shortchange the questions if you got them. And if you don't want a few minutes, someone give us a few minutes, and I'll start on this, and then we'll take a break.
We do have some questions if you want to take one or two.
Yeah, let's break
this up. Okay. With the journal that you give clients, do you take the position it's an attorney-client communication and not discoverable, or do you produce the journal at the client's deposition?
Really good question, and I'll give you two answers. One, I don't know the law in your venue because I don't know who's asking the question what venue you're in. I may or may not know it if I knew where, but it doesn't matter. Here's the question. In venues that I know the law in, that would be attorney-client privilege work product, and they absolutely couldn't get it. It's no different than in your initial interview talking to your client about what happened in the crash and what are the injuries and how they feel, and you took notes down. You've asked them to keep, it's not like, sometimes people create a journal before they ever get to the lawyer, not on the lawyer's instruction or request, just on their own. Well, those journals that are done with no lawyer involved can't possibly be work product. And they can't possibly be attorney-client privilege. The attorney wasn't even involved. So that journal is discoverable. And that's probably where the question is from. A lot of times I've had that come up back when I used to work the cases up. But if you specifically give that assignment, I cannot imagine that's discoverable. And I wouldn't turn it over because I don't want to start opening the door to attorney-client privilege and waiving it and all that stuff. And because I'm going to take that journal and I'm going to cull through and take the things I think are most telling to bring to life the reality of what it is to live with this forever injury. And some of them I may think, that isn't as strong as this, and I'm not going to give everyone. So we're going to prioritize and pick and choose. And I would rather be doing that myself and not have them being able to pick and choose what they want. So I would not. However, what if they got it? Would I really care? Would I really care them being able to look at a real-time journal my client created over a week in their life? It tells a story of just what an impact this has. Not because they're in a wheelchair, not because they can't jog, not because they can't go to work, not because they can't get on a ride at Disney or unload a truck or mow a lawn, none of which hurts so long as they didn't cover and lie about it. That hurts. That's a pitfall that wasn't one someone stepped in. But so long as it's consistent with their testimony, all of that is just somebody who has an injury that interferes, not so much with the doing as with the experience of doing, making little choices with consequences, fluctuating between low-level pilot light pain and flare-ups, and always in the middle, depending on choices. But those choices include, I appear active on the outside because I don't have an outside injury. You can't judge it, look at it. It's not a broken arm. It's not a sprained ankle. I don't have crutches. It's an inside injury that you have to assess internally. That doesn't mean it's made up. It doesn't mean we can't prove it up. MRIs don't lie. We can dang sure prove it up. Spasms can't be faked. A clinical correlation dealing with the timing of events and the medical stuff, none of that's made up. That's real. It's just an internal investigation. You have to assess it internally. You can't let them turn your case inside out and assess it externally. That's a dirty trick. Don't let them do it. That would be no different than having somebody go to a doctor to see how their cholesterol, if they got high cholesterol, or to see if they got coronary artery disease when they don't know and don't have any symptoms. You think the doctor would have them spin around, put on the robe and spin around the gown and say, you look fine, go, you don't know, no coronary artery, no cholesterol, you're good, you look good. Of course not. They run blood work, they put you on a treadmill. Same thing here. You can't judge a herniated disc from the outside looking in. You can't judge a book by its cover. And don't let them turn your case inside as if it was an outside case. But once you've explained that and taught the jury, there are plenty of ways to prove it. There's nothing better than an MRI. The jury can see it with their own eyes. So having gone through all of that, what would be wrong if they saw the real life of how that kind of injury plays out? It plays out in those kind of subtle ways. But you know what? This is as good as it's going to get. As the normal aging process overlays and the damage links in the spine, it's going to start interfering more and more with the actual doing. And this is a verdict for all time. We don't come back in 20, 30, 40 years and redo it. We get it right now. We don't get it right at all. So I wouldn't be scared of them having it. Having said it, I wouldn't give it to them. But I wouldn't be going, I'm not going to do that because what if? Just explain clearly what to put in and not. Don't have your client be doodling in the side with stuff you don't want them to have. Keep it on, keep their eye on the ball. Keep the assignment crisp and tight. So good question. Any others?
There's a number of requests for you to expand on the bicycle analogy. The bicycle for two?
Sure. The bicycle for two is this. I like analogies to get points. I love analogies to get legal points across. For example, in jury selection, I want jurors to understand how a subtle bias can have a profound impact. So when we start the honor system called jury selection, I'm not pulling teeth, not because there are people who want to get on your case to screw you. They're just dishonest people, stinkers. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about all the honest, good potential jurors out there who it would be pulling teeth to get them to say, yeah, I hate these kind of lawsuits. I think people exaggerate and I don't like large verdicts and I'm very suspicious and all those things. But you know what? You got a good case, I'll be fine. So it's hard, not because they're giving you a hard time, because they honestly don't understand, because they don't live in the world of bias. We do. We know how subtle bias can have a profound impact. How do I get that point across lightning quick? I can't have a psychology class for an hour and a half in jury selection. I got to get it across in about 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. An analogy, the power of analogy. It's as, folks, I'm going to be asking you a question about life experience, beliefs, opinions you have that could potentially impact you if you sat in this case, kind of create a point of friction. We all have subjects, if we were asked to sit in judgment of, that we come to with some feelings. One side might be at a disadvantage. Doesn't make us unfair, it makes us human beings. It's like, here comes the analogy. If we had a competition to see who had the best pies, and it was down to 2 pies, 1 cherry, 1 apple. And I was randomly picked out of the audience to be the judge. And it just so happens I'm not crazy about cherry pie. How many of you think the only right thing for me to do would be to tell the contestants and let them decide what to do with it, that I'm not crazy about cherry pie? Particularly the person with cherry pie probably going to want to know. They go, yeah, man. Likewise, does everyone agree? Not only is it the right thing to reveal that to the contestants, but to also be honest with myself and not sugarcoat the potential impact it might have on me, in spite of my best effort to push it aside. Does everyone agree that's the right thing to do too? And I'm not suggesting I would take some wonderful succulent pie over here, happen to be filled with cherry, and a dried up sorry pie over here happen to have apple, and throw it over the filling. I wouldn't do that, but all else equal. When I bite into the cherry pie, my lip curls a little. I can't help it. That's how I'm wired. So does everyone agree the right thing is not only to reveal it, also be honest with myself and not sugarcoat the potential impact it might have on me, even though I try hard to put it aside? They'll agree. So because maybe I'm better off down the hall judging the chili. I'm pretty much like all the chili. Now, does anyone think in that example, if I were to follow that model and say to the contestants, I cannot assure you I could be completely fair and impartial under these circumstances because I got a bit of a bias against cherry pie. I can't help it. I'm wired that way. Does anyone think if I revealed that honestly to the contestants, that would make me seem unfair or weak-minded? They're going to all say no. And then you say, okay, well, this case has got nothing to do with anything as lighthearted as pies. This is serious car crash. I want to know how many of you have feelings against car crash cases? How many feelings against pain and suffering, non-economic? How many have feelings against large verdicts? You know, whatever the subject is. I don't want to turn this into more dire. My point is the power of analogy. I could not have got that concept across. Now the good, fair-minded juror who just didn't understand how bias works, boom, they got it. Now you say, so you tell me you're very suspicious and think most people exaggerate. Would it be fair to say, like the pie contest, that you could not assure the court you could be completely unfair and impartial here? You do your best. But because of those feelings you're wired with, then in all honesty, you couldn't assure the court they won't have an impact because you got a bit of a bias. Not ugly, hateful, just in kind of like we described. Would that be fair and reasonable? Is that an honest answer? And by the way, I don't want to put words in your mouth. This is shorthand. You raised your hand, you said me, that makes me, what I'm hearing is yes to that question. I may be dead wrong. Don't want to put words in your mouth, but I also want to move quickly. So I'm going to say what I think you meant by your answer. If I'm off the mark, is everyone okay with telling me you're off the mark? Okay. Now, having said that, would that be fair and accurate or not? Yeah, that would be. That'd be. How many of the rest do you feel like that? And you go find them for cause. None of that works if you don't break this barrier down of this concept of how subtle bias can have an unintentional but significant impact on the outcome. That little analogy, they go, I see that. I get that. And you know what? This might impact me. It may really. I sure can't promise it wouldn't. And I'm taking this telling the truth stuff serious. I'm on the road. Come back to the question. I like analogies for that reason. The legal concept of concurring cause, meaning in most states, like in Florida, we have something called concurring cause, and it says, first, the cause says it was a, not the. The means only. A means one of more than one. It says in order to be a legal cause, it must, and it goes on with it. Then we have what's called concurring cause, which is just some states all have it in one. We break it in two. There's a second layer to legal cause, which is concurring cause. Concurring cause says specifically, it need not be the sole cause. It can happen in connection with some other cause, some other negligence, some other medical condition, some other cause, so long as it contributes, the negligence contributes substantially to the outcome or the harm. You explain that. That's important because when they say your client had some pre-existing degeneration, which is nothing more than natural aging, it would be shocking. There would be a special on 60 Minutes. There's this 50-year-old lady who has no aging in her spine. The doctors would have a special conference to figure out what can we do to extract from her to make all of the rest of us like that, because that's impossible. Of course your client's got degeneration in her spine. It's perfectly normal. But it may very well have put her at more risk so that this crash that might not have hurt the middle linebacker for the Bucks, she ends up with a permanent disc injury forever. And the juror is trying to struggle with that. Concurring cause is an important concept. When you tie it to an analogy, it can make it easy to stick because it's complicated, kind of like the bias concept is. And that simple analogy of a bicycle built for two means this: it need not be the sole cause. You can have more than one cause that end up at the same destination. It's just got to be this cause, the crash, was a significant part of it, not insubstantial or insignificant. It's like a bicycle built for two. Yes, she may have been at risk, and part of the outcome may have been that she's 50 and her spine's not as supple as some 16-year-old. But that's as is justice, folks. They take them as is. but by gosh, this crash was pedaling hard. And it was a substantial force that got us to there. So you can have more than one thing pedaling, so long as this thing, negligence, what they did wrong, not doing their job on the road and causing this crash and Raymond, my client, was one of the reasons she ended up where she ended up with this problem, this destination. That's the idea of the bicycle built for two. Any others? Let me give you a couple other great phrases and then we'll come back with some questions because we're on that. I believe in, we talked about before, picking the perfect, powerful words. I'm not going to go back to that. In this, I call it creating the language of the case. And this all happens during the workup phase. You want to create the language of the case not on the week before trial. You want to create it in the beginning during the workup phase, because the framing will help increase your value, have your case prepared to have a bruise-free case that is now ready to plug into trial, pre-wired for a bruise-free trial. And all of that is framing. You got facts are all over the place. You put them in the right framework, it changes everything. When we frame them with perfect, powerful words, which we've already talked about, that's creating the language of the case. There are two other parts to creating the language of the case. One of them is what I call resurrecting recognizable phrases. My fancy way of saying old adages. Why are they so powerful? Because they come with history. Everyone knows what they mean. You say you can't judge a book by its cover. You say a picture's worth 1,000 words. You don't need to explain it for half an hour. Everyone instantly knows it, recognizes it, and trusts it. It's got a history. It came from grandparents and parents. So old adages are great ways to build these anchoring corners that we call a framework to put the facts in. Perfect, powerful words, adages, like actions speak louder than words. It's a form of circumstantial evidence. You know, the defendant says he had the green light, but he left the scene. Actions speak louder than words. Now that's a really easy one, but there are lots of them. Doctor changes a record. Actions speak louder than words. If you haven't done anything wrong, you don't have anything to hide. When people start, someone gets caught in a lie. Actions speak louder than words. When there's nothing to hide, people don't hide it with lies. So actions speak louder than words. A picture's worth 1,000 words. If you've got photographs that are good for your case, if your car is torn up, if you got a client, you're going to have a client in this case that looks perfectly fine. You can't judge a book by its cover. If you catch them lying, if you catch the defense who's been twisting the medical records out of context and taking one record that sounds like they weren't hurt and skipping the next page of the next visit that says chronic pain, and they played that kind of cut and paste game with the medical records, you can say truth matters. Everybody knows what that means. You can create your own that sound like old adages. MRIs don't lie. I mean, that's powerful. Courtroom's not a place for hinting. It's a place for saying what you mean and backing it up. They have the feel of an old adage. The last is of this, what I call creating the language of your case, that you do early in the case, that you do in the winning before beginning, is picking powerful, perfect words, which we covered last time, resurrecting recognizable phrases, which is old adages, and then there's asking winning questions. And you say, all right, but that's really jury stuff. No, you set those winning questions in your language of the case early, because it will guide you. It will help you say, here's the sound bites I need. Here's the best foot forward I need. Here's the intel I need to gather to cover. Here's the pitfall I need to stay out of. They act as personal framing that you will ultimately use with a jury, but you create those questions for yourself as like a like a guiding light for yourself or a spotlight. Just like I talked about spotlight words, these questions are spotlight. For example, I already did one when I went through what I call the sensible sequence of events, where the person had no problems with their neck or back for X amount of time. We're in the crash, we're in pain immediately. Pain never went away. And the defense is trying to say, even though that same exact identical pain continued on somewhere in here, it suddenly stopped being from the crash, which they admitted was from a sprain, and now suddenly became the natural aging process, which just happened like a bolt out of the sky on that exact moment without any break in the pain to appear as the exact pain in the exact joint, in the exact part of that joint, as it was before when they said that is an injury from pain from. It's nonsense. So what is the question that helped frames that? Is the fact this pain wasn't there before, started with a crash, never went away? Is it all just a big coincidence? What a great framing word. Is it all, and by the way, never say, is it a coincidence? You know what? People say coincidence happened. You go, are you suggesting that's a coincidence? People go, yeah. You know what jurors think? Coincidence happened. Just add, are you suggesting it's all just a big coincidence? Changes everything. All just a big changes it. You go, coincidence, people, coincidence happened. You could say, it's all just a big coincidence. Bullshit. That's what people think. Common sense, no way. So those are examples of asking winning questions. There, let me just here are a few more while we're on it. Here's some more examples of old adages. Rather be safe than sorry. Don't cut safety corners. Those are powerful ones. What lies beneath the surface is another way of saying you can't judge a book by its cover. I like to say, turn negligence, whether it's in a medical malpractice. I don't like standard of care. There's nothing in writing. They think that means it's in writing. No one knows what the hell it means, and we got a big debate. I like to make it something jury can understand. Same thing with negligence, just in a car crash. I like to turn it in not doing their job right. He wasn't doing his job right on the road that day. His job, it's like a rules of the road with Rick Freeman. It's just my way of saying it. His job was to pay attention. His job was to drive safe. His job was to not endanger the motoring public. His job was to stop at stop signs. He wasn't doing his job right. If you're with a doctor, if he runs some tests and never reads the test, says, I didn't need to read them. I could tell he was fine. We discharged from the hospital. Turns out test comes in, bad news. Guy's already left, no one calls him. If you do a job, if you start a job, finish it. If you're going to do a job, do it right. What kid hadn't heard that? What a great way to frame negligence. If you do a job, take the time to do it right. And for goodness sakes, pay attention when you're doing a job. That all just feels good because it's connecting back like old adages. And like I said, you can create your own catchy phrases. MRIs don't lie. This is not cane pain. This is pilot light pain. It's catchy. And then you explain in case you have somebody. I did something yesterday with David Ball. He had a really good point. And I'm a big fan of David Ball's. He had a good point. And I took it to heart. Some people may be younger and say, I don't know what pilot light is. You know what? But you can explain it. You're probably going to have some older ones can further explain. Bring a picture if you need to. Bring a picture that shows a pilot light in a hot water heater and a pilot light on a gas stove. By the way, a gas stove, we got a lot of electric stoves. I got a gas stove in my house. A lot of people still have gas stoves. Brand stinking new. But David said it. And I went, you know what? I don't want to be blind to this. David doesn't say stuff that isn't smart. So I thought, you know what? I need to explain it. So what you say? It's like an old gas stove. I mean, not an old gas. It's like a hot water heater. And there's a light under there, always flickering, and then you go, and it comes up high. Same thing on a gas stove, not the electric stove, the gas guy. There's that little pilot light. So when you turn it, it goes, And you turn it off and it's there flickering, doesn't go out. Now the new ones, no, I don't know. Maybe the new ones go out. I don't know. I'm trying to think. It goes click, 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 click. So maybe they do go out. But anyhow, you explain it, show them a picture, whatever. Or come up with a different one. But the point is creating your own catchy phrases. It's not cane pain. It's pilot light pain that flares but never goes away. That's catchy. It sticks in the mind. There's imagery of it. Now you understand, yeah, he looks fine walking around because it isn't cane pain. Doesn't mean he doesn't have what's going on the inside. Can't judge a book by its cover. What lies beneath the surface, it's there, always. Flares, but never goes away. I mean, just looking through here. Asking the winning questions. Here are a couple more. You can ask, was it all just a big coincidence? But here's another one. What makes more sense questions? Like, you can ask yourself, what makes more sense? The reason it wasn't there before the crash happened in the crash and has never gone away. What makes more sense? The crash caused it initially, and the exact same thing continued on without any break whatsoever. And suddenly, the natural aging process explains it, not the crash. Or it's all the crash. What makes more sense? I personally like it's all just a big coincidence better, but that's another way to get back to the same thing. If you've got a bunch of treaters or treaters testifying, they've only got someone they ran out and hired and paid a bunch of money to. You can ask this question. Who's the most reliable source of information? The treating doctor with no dog in the fight or the person they hired? Or who's a better guide to the truth? You can use, in med-mal cases, I'll give a few of these. Should doctors be allowed to waste time unnecessarily if it's a case where they've been that quickly? Should doctors have to put two and two together when you got the left hand not knowing what the right was doing? Should doctors have to utilize the tools that are at their fingertips if they didn't run a test that they could have run? Should doctors have to finish the job they started if they order a test, don't look at it, or don't do the follow-up? Should doctors have to keep their patients in the loop, not in the dark? You know that one. Here are some other basic flashlight words. We talked about finding the right perfect word in that little formula, whether it's an activator word or inert, and if it's activator, is it positive or negative? Let me just give you a couple others that are good words. For causation, when they say, but I don't think that caused harm, typical in a med-mal case, but you'll see them in other kind of cases. Even if we did wrong, didn't cause this harm, something else caused it. Call it the old so what defense. Great phrase. Because everyone's heard someone go, so what? You know, your child, skips class and they go, well, so what? You want to, you got to be kidding me. Go to your room. Some husband comes in drunk at 2 a.m. I was just out of so what? What's the wife think? I'll tell you so what when I give you divorce papers tomorrow. So what pisses people off. Saying the old so what implies they do it all the time. It's all just a big coincidence defense is another way to say the old so what defense. If they're trying to blame other people, the anything but defense, the anything but, that taps into things that make people go, and that's what you want. For damages, we talk about you're sitting as a group of appraisers assessing what's a fair and reasonable amount for what was taken in the way of help. Taken is a powerful phrase. Compensation, I worry, is one of those inert words. It can mean paycheck. It can mean making up for what was lost. Taken, everybody knows it. David Ball yesterday, if you didn't see, added magic to that phrase. He He took a powerful word and put it with my powerful word, and together they're nuclear. I said taken. He said freedom. They have taken, this injury has taken, the defendant or the injury has taken the freedom to just pick up her child and not have to make a choice of what's the price I'm going to pay. Taken the freedom to go to a movie and not have in the background noise this discomfort. Taken the freedom to live life not making a million little choices, do or don't do, knowing there's going to be a consequence. Or simply taken the freedom to change lanes and check the blind spot without having to rotate at the trunk because you can't turn your head without risking being hurt. So taken is a powerful word for the harm caused. Freedom everyone treasures. Put them together and you really have something that you can sink your teeth into how bad this really is. Verdict for all time. What a wonderful catchphrase for jurors to realize we're all going home. We're going back to their lives. This person's going to continue with this when we go home. And it isn't going to be for a little while. It's going to be for the whole while, ever, which is a long time. How are we time, Rise?
We're about at the end here, Keith, if you want to.
Here, yeah, I'll just wrap up with, let me just end with one. Elderly clients. Here's another great phrase. All time is not equal. I love that phrase. I have people ask me all the time, what do you do if your client's 80 and you can't do a big per diem argument? You can't say it's over a long time. They don't have a lot of time to live, or they're sick. Maybe they got cancer, or they've got a heart problem, but they've had this thrust into their life unnaturally. All time's not equal. It's an empowering phrase. Closing argument, explained to a jury. This didn't happen to my client when she had all the time in the world. When people are younger, they tend to be in a hurry. Lots of kids, not all of them, but a lot of them would like to be older. They'd like time to pass. They'd like to be 18 or 21 or grown up, or they'd like to be out of college and be working. They'd like to be established in a little, but you know what? When people get at the other end of the spectrum, and that quantity of what feels forever doesn't feel like it anymore. Now there's a limited, and you can see the end. Time is so much more valuable. Every moment matters. Little things like hugging someone goodbye. When they're early, they go, hey man, get on. That could be the last hug. I'm sorry if there's a dispute. All right, I'm sorry, because we're going to be together for years. I'm sorry is a plea for forgiveness, because no one wants to end on a bad note. I love you. Love you. Not when you're close to them. I love you, honey. Why do you think deathbed scenes are so heart-wrenching in movies? Because anything that's in short supply that was valuable to start with is extraordinarily valuable. And the ultimate scarcity is time of our life. In this injury, my client isn't in great health, but she's at a point in time where time matters to her. Moments matter. And all time isn't equal. And they've thrust this injury into her life, added this burden into her life at a time when time matters most to her. Now you do that argument, who's going to shortchange the elderly person in their life they love? Because that's what the people connect to. So if you have someone who's elderly, let's respect the dignity. And I tell the jury that. Let's respect the reality and the dignity of my client who's at this point in her life when time is so precious. So all times not equal is a great adjuster for yourself while we're winning before beginning to put a fair and reasonable value. And let's not start shortchanging because numerical days left are low. Those short number of days matter more than decades when they're your few years. Thank y'all very much.